But before we start the press conference, I just want to share the information that I decided to leave this club in this summer. So, and yeah, respectfully, it's a club and it's helping me to my decision. So, just want to share this information before we start the press conference. So.
Well, there you have it, everyone. Tottenham legend Son Heung-min is leaving the club after many years of service. Welcome back to another episode of Paintballers. I'm your host, Albert, with my co-founder, Jason. Jason, I think we all knew this day was coming, but to see it actually happen is pretty raw. Initial reaction, how are we feeling?
Yeah, to be honest, Albert, as a long-time Sunny fan, a long-time Tottenham fan, I think the best word to describe my gut reaction is, just heartbreaking. Like you said, I think we knew eventually that he was going to leave Tottenham, that he was going to leave the Premier League, that he was going to, step down towards the end of his career, enjoy kind of his retirement phase, as most legends do. But to be honest, I think it's a little bit more difficult for me to accept because I think that yes, his output hasn't been what it was when we saw him in his very prime. But I think that there's just so much that he has left to offer in the tank. Tottenham are in the Champions League. They're going to be playing a ton of games this year, upwards of 60 potentially. And for me, my hope was that he would stay one more year. He would help the transition from Angel Postecoglou to Thomas Frank, the continued integration of Yang Min-hyuk into the club, and enjoy one last run in the Champions League, which is the pinnacle of competitions in club football. And just to see him, he doesn't have to start every game in the Champions League, but having him walk out as the captain with the Champions League anthem would have made me just burst with pride and would have given me so much joy. But at the same time, I think I have to realize that Sonny has done so much for the club, but also, just the many, many fans of Tottenham, the fans in Korea, all around the world. And he has every right to make the decision in terms of what he wants to do in the next phase of his career. But yeah, I just think that the MLS, while, it's getting better in terms of the league itself, I don't know if he's at that level yet.
I think the writing was on the wall when Thomas Frank took over and he refused to commit to letting Son retain the captaincy. And average fan would be like, well, they won the Europa League. They're back in the Champions League. It's not like Sonny was a problem in the locker room per se. So the only reason you would be hesitant to say he's still my captain is because he's in the process of leaving. And I initially thought, as you did, that okay, he's going to do another year in Europe, and then he'll go to the MLS after the World Cup. But it seems like that process was definitely accelerated. And yeah, I just guess as somebody who isn't as much of a diehard Spurs fan as you, I can't help but feel a little disappointed in the club as well. Obviously, this is definitely a big part of it is Sonny's own decision to leave, but you can't help but wonder if he looked at the situation and thought, okay, well, Thomas Frank isn't going to play me as much as I want to play. Maybe Daniel Levy and his minions want me to go so they can get a nice fee for me before it's too late. And I think all of these things combined leave, I don't want to say a bitter taste because he had a great run. Like, we can't be too selfish. He had a trophy. He's had many great memories that we'll cherish forever. But I just feel like it's still disappointing because, like you said, he still has some juice in the tank. We know he's not the same player that he was even 2 years ago. But I think that he had a lot of injuries that he was dealing with post-Asian Cup. And he never really had a full offseason to rest. And maybe he could have done that this year. But we'll never know. Yeah, Jason, just as a Spurs fan, do you think this was more a Son Heung-min decision, or do you think it was a board decision, or maybe you think it's a little bit of both?
I think absolutely, 110% it was a Son Heung-min decision. I think that Spurs, would have been happy for him to stay one more year. And like I said, kind of help the transition period just because he knows the club so well. He knows all the old staff members, every single player down from the academy to Ben Davies, who he's been with for his entire Spurs career. And, Thomas Frank, I think, is one of the most exceptional managers in the Premier League and the most tactically flexible as well. So I think that, we would have seen Sonny flourish under him in a more in a role that's more suited to him. But I think, one of the things that you just mentioned, Albert, resonates with me a lot is that I think, as a Spurs fan, I think that the club could have handled it a little bit better. Some examples that come to mind are Toni Kroos and Luka Modric with Real Madrid, Thomas Muller with your favorite club, Bayern. I think that those, fans knew that the players were going to leave,
Yeah,
but then they
farewell
had,
tour.
a
Yeah.
farewell tour, a full year to kind of prepare for that and really cherish, the last minutes of watching their favorite player in their home stadium. And what really, makes me really sad is that, Spurs fans, Korean fans, everyone, just football fans in general, they didn't realize that the last time that they saw Sonny in North London was going to be, probably his final match there. He didn't even get a chance to get a proper send off from the home fans. Watching Luka Modric get that sort of send off in Madrid, same with Toni Kroos. And then, yeah, like I said, Thomas Muller in the Allianz Arena. I would have loved Sonny to have, 60,000 fans roaring his name, singing his chant, and giving him a standing ovation, thanking him for the 10 years of service he had for this club. All ends can't be perfect. I still think that there is a way for this story to end beautifully in Seoul on Sunday. So, I think that hopefully for Spurs and Sonny, it's going to be an amazing moment for them, cherishing their memories together.
So for our viewers to know, we're recording this on Saturday morning, Korea time. Son Heung-min will play his last match in a Spurs uniform at 8 p.m. tomorrow, Sunday, Korea time, against Newcastle next to the at the Seoul World Cup Stadium. And I kind of agree with you, Jace. It's that it would have been amazing for him to have his last game in North London, in that beautiful stadium that he's played so many games in. But at the same time, there's a bit of beautiful beautiful scene I think you could witness too with him in Korea. He's able to say goodbye to people, the fans of his home country. Whereas in England, it's still a foreign country where he's, not an Englishman. He spent a lot of time there, but obviously, he's a Korean, and he feels the most joy, I think, playing in front of the national team fans. So I think that will be a good way for him to go as well. Now, I think that looking ahead from what we've seen in reporting from various sources across the United States is that most likely he's going to end up at LAFC. As someone who grew up in California, I think it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, there is a ton of Korean Americans living there. The World Cup is coming in less than a year's time, so it's also a genius move, I think, for his marketing and brand should he wish to venture off into, more media-related fields after he retires. Jason, initial reactions to the news that he's going to LAFC, and also how do you think they're going to utilize it? Because I think that given he still has some juice in the tank, I think he's still very good enough to play on the left wing, especially in the MLS, considering that I think the league quality has gotten better, but it's still not ideal, if that makes sense.
If he were to go to the MLS, LAFC are the perfect club for him. He had that little tussle with Hugo Lloris in that famous Amazon series, but I'm sure they're still really good friends. His friends are there, like you said. The Korean community in Los Angeles is second to none in anywhere in the world. He also actually already met a lot of the LAFC supporters when I think Spurs visited America maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So there's a pre-existing relationship there. And in terms of what role he can play, I think absolutely he'll play a left wing role. For him though, like Ange Postecoglou last year had him focusing a lot on 1v1s, getting to the byline, crossing it back into the box. But I think for him, I hope that he plays more of an inside forward role where he is actually getting onto the end of crosses rather than providing him. Like, don't get me wrong, he is a wonderfully creative player, and that is a skill that he has added as he has, matured. But the Sonny we know is the finisher. He's the clinical poacher. He needs someone setting these chances up for him. So I hope that he is able to rely more on his goal scoring prowess that he hasn't really done last year.
Part of the reason he was ineffective under Ange was the fact that Ange had him hugging the touchline so much. And, there's nothing wrong with that depending on the opponent you're playing. But Sonny is very much more of a forward than a winger, in my opinion. He's a guy who was able to run past guys on the side, but as he aged, like you said, he was able to cut inside a bit more, play a little bit in between the lines. And I think that at LAFC, he'll probably, on paper, be positioned as the left winger, but I would assume he'll play pretty much a free role in that team. He's automatically going to come in be one of the best players in the MLS. If he's anything like the Son Heung-min we know, he's going to be a top 3, top 2 goal scorer in that league. It's just a perfect place for him to be besides maybe New York. I think he'll be comfortable there, the California lifestyle with the number of Koreans as well, but just the Korean food and just kind of, I'll say this, as a Korean living in California, you don't even have to speak English. There's so many Koreans near you that it almost feels like a second home. I'm very happy for him in a personal sense. But yeah, from a sporting perspective, I think you could see more of him playing towards the inside. Now, I do wonder, Jason, how this affects his standing with the national team. Obviously, he's still going to be the captain. He's still going to start for us. But do you think this also leads to maybe Hong Myung-bo playing Son Heung-min more to the inside, especially as he ages? Or do you think this doesn't really change his status within the national team as we, look towards the September and October windows?
Yeah, I don't think that it'll have any sort of bearing on the national team. I think Hong Myung-bo, as we know, is quite limited in terms of his tactical flexibility
Yeah,
anyway. So
he's a shit manager.
yeah, so Son Heung-min he'll play whatever role that he was, playing a few months ago. But I wouldn't be surprised, Albert, now that Son himself has announced to the football world essentially that he is basically a free agent, not a free agent. There's going to be some sort of transfer fee involved there, but that he is willing to move from Tottenham. I think that a lot more clubs are going to be making some serious inquiries. CAA base is based in America, which is why it makes sense that LAFC have reached out to him. And as far as I understand, they've already held like Zoom meetings, like Zoom online meetings with the player in order to gauge interest. And I understand that those went really positively as well. But don't be surprised if, other European clubs start jumping into the mix. I think Saudi is out of the question, to be honest with you. I think that if he wanted to go to Saudi, he would have gone a long, long time ago. Of course, the wages will always be one of the best in the world. But I think there's just something with Korean players. You start with Park Ji-sung, you start with Ki Sung-yong. Ki Sung-yong famously said the captain of the Korean national team will not play in Saudi Arabia and China, specifically those two countries. And Son Heung-min is very close with Ki Sung-yong and Park Ji-sung both. So I don't think that a move to Saudi will be in the cards. Like a lower level league, I don't hide it on Twitter. I'm a big fan of Fenerbahce in Turkey. And Mourinho is the manager there, and we know how much respect that Sonny has for Mourinho. I think that's where his career really exploded, with Kane kind of dropping in deep to set up Son. That's when he finally got his superstardom. So and they're looking for a left winger. We are looking for a left winger in order to replace Alan Saint-Maximin, whose loan ended and he went back to Saudi. So and then the Turkish clubs, we just saw Victor Osimhen. Galatasaray paid 75 million euros for Victor Osimhen. This is not, like the teams, maybe the mid to low tier clubs, they're a little bit financially capped, but the Galatasarays, the Fenerbahces, the Besiktashes of the league, they have a lot of financial power. So, a 20 million euro transfer fee is nothing. And, to cover Sonny's wages, whatever he asks, they will cover. So as long as the player is open to the move, and I imagine that Jose will be more than eager to get on a FaceTime with his former pupil, I wouldn't be surprised if we hear rumors of that. But I just don't know how progressed this LAFC deal is. If it's kind of a thing where it's 95% done and we're just waiting for the final signature, or whether maybe it's only like 60-70% done and there's still a chance for other clubs to hijack the deal. I think a more romantic ending would be for him to return to Germany where everything started, maybe a Bayer Leverkusen, Hamburg. I think that's where that's his first European club, I think. That would be magical, but I don't think that the German clubs, unfortunately, because it's 50% fan owned, I don't think they have that kind of financial power.
50 plus 1.
50 plus 1, yes. And in Bayern Munich, I think I don't think that it doesn't make sense for him to go to Bayern, because if he wants of a more relaxed end to his career, it just doesn't make sense. So yeah, keep an eye out for Fenerbahce. Keep an eye out for some other European clubs, which I really do hope they come into the mix, because he's not MLS level yet. I respect all my all our even our viewers who may be big MLS supporters, but he's 33. He still had 17 goal contributions last year in the Premier League. He's not that level yet.
The MLS is not a good league. I think the MLS is getting better. I'm glad that Messi is there to elevate the image of the sport itself. So don't get me wrong, I'm not a blanket US soccer hater, but I think that the league's quality itself is still not at a point where you want to be tuning in every week to those games unless it's your job. I think there are many toxic parts of U.S. soccer, the federation, but also with the fandom. And you see it playing out with the mess that the USMNT have going on with Mauricio Pochettino running the show, which is another topic. There's just a few dates I think we have to look at for these transfer deadline windows because each league has a different date. I believe for the MLS, that deadline this year in 2025 is around mid-August, if I'm not mistaken. And then in Turkey, I think the window is extended all the way into September. Jason, correct me if I'm wrong.
There's a date.
So given the different deadlines here, I think he's going to probably want to make a decision well before one of those deadlines is up. Now, from what some MLS insiders like Tom Bogert's reporting, LAFC are closing in on a deal. It's not totally done, but LAFC are getting there. But I think with this news basically breaking in the beginning of the weekend, you're going to have a ton of clubs from all over the world calling Son Heung-min's representatives just to put out feelers to see if he's interested. And I think Son Heung-min would be wise to listen to that because even if he wants to be in LA, he should still look at all of his options because, like we said, this is a guy who could pretty much play in any league. Maybe he can't be a guaranteed starter every day in the Prem or for a high-level La Liga team, but just about any league, I think he could help out. Jason, I guess what I want to ask you now is just for the future of Tottenham, what this means for the club, kind of, and what do you think Son Heung-min's legacy is now that he's departing from the team?
Yeah, let me touch on his legacy first because I think without a doubt he is Mr. Tottenham. He leaves as one of the biggest legends, if not the biggest legend in the club. He is the first captain to bring a trophy to Tottenham in 17 years. The first captain to bring a European trophy to Tottenham in over 40 years. He has won the Golden Boot with Tottenham. He has played a Champions League final with Tottenham. Him and Harry Kane are, I believe, the leaders in terms of joint goal and assist contributions. He has shattered records for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. And yes, Tottenham are a top 6 club, but they have struggled recently. And, their most recent success has been, inconsistent at best. And I think what really defines Sonny's legacy at Tottenham is that he stayed when everyone else left. Harry Kane, he wanted to go to Man City. He didn't get the Man City move, so he stayed one more year. And then, because he wasn't winning anything, he went to Bayern and he won the Bundesliga title. Who else left? Christian Eriksen left. That desk line, Dele Alli, Eriksen, Son, Kane, that was really fun to watch. But all 3 of those guys left, and Sonny was the only one who stayed. He signed a contract extension when Nuno Espirito Santos was the manager. And I know Nuno is having he had a great year last year with Nottingham Forest, but man, his Tottenham were awful. And at the lowest of lows, guess who signed a 3 or 4 year contract extension? It was Sonny, because he didn't want to win elsewhere. He didn't want the easy way out. There was one club that he loved, the one club that believed in him, that gave him a chance in England, and that was Tottenham. And he, as the captain, he wanted to win as the captain. I think, just kind of going through the reactions on Twitter. I know that Twitter isn't representative of, and all of the fans' opinions, but it's just an outpouring of love and the support for him. I know that, near the end, there was a little bit of a rocky relationship with some of the Korean fans and some of the more local Tottenham fans. But I think, without a doubt, he will remain in the memories of Tottenham fans as a legend. I hope that they build a statue for him. I think he certainly deserves it, with the loyalty and the success that he has showed. But yeah, I think his legacy will be that of a legend. And then moving forward, we have some replacements, Matisse Tel from Bayern. He reminds me a lot of Sonny in that the quality of his ball striking, the finishing, it's very similar to when Sonny was younger. His French teammate Wilson Odobert can also play on the left. But I think moving forward, it will have to be, filling in his boots with a committee. There's not one player who can fill in his shoes. We just signed Mohamed Kudus. He'll be excellent, but he's on the right. Maybe we bring in a huge winger, like a big name. Maybe we bring in a Rafael Leao. But again, the legacy that he will leave, I think can't be filled for many, many, many years. It was just such a pride to see him wear that white Tottenham jersey, and I'm just really sad that I won't be able to, see him wear it again.
So he's a bigger legend than Harry Kane for sure.
I think so. I think undoubtedly, they're both legends, but Harry Kane left when things got tough, and Sonny stayed. And not only did he stay, he won a trophy for the club and a major European trophy. So without a doubt, Sonny for me, unbiased opinion, not even as a Korean, he's there's no doubt that he's the bigger legend.
I want to say that I think more than anything, Son Heung-min kind of almost embodies the soul of Tottenham in a way that many other players couldn't, which is really fascinating because here's this skinny, lanky Korean kid from Kangwon province, never lived in England his entire life, wants to leave after his first year. Pochettino convinces him to stay, and he blossoms into a man, a leader. And when everyone leaves, like you said, at the end of the day, he's the one holding that beautiful Europa League trophy. You could just see the reaction on his face when the final whistle blew, how much it meant to him. Even though he only played a few minutes, he gave everything he had. When you do talk about legends, right, you talk about somebody who would die on the pitch for the team, who represents the community on and off the pitch in a decent manner, that is a role model for the youth to look up to. He really embodies that for this club. And I think that, I hope, even though I'm Korean, that they do build a stadium for him, or that they build a statue for him. But I also hope that they retire the number. The one name I think that's synonymous with the club is Son Heung-min. And I think that even though today is a bit of a sad day that he's leaving Europe, I think what we can do is really cherish the memories of what he gave us, because it was so special, man. Waking up in Seoul at 3, 4 in the morning just to watch him score otherworldly bangers that I could never imagine an Asian player scoring, let alone a Korean, is something that we're going to tell our kids about, I think, for many years to come. And undoubtedly, I don't care what United fans say, he is the greatest Korean footballer of all time, on and off the pitch, I think. And, we're going to be eagerly watching what he does, especially because Jason and I are both, based in North America. Hopefully, he'll still be able to have a good World Cup, because it's not the end, guys. We're still going to see him captain the national team. So there's still a lot of exciting days ahead.
I guess end the video with a message to Sonny. Firstly, touching the number retirement, I think that would be lovely. I just don't know if that's feasible, because 7 is such an iconic number in soccer, in football. Sorry,
In sports.
I don't think
In
in
sports.
sports. Yeah, so that would be a lovely gesture, but I just don't think it would be impossible or unheard of. I think the only number that's been retired is, sadly, when Diogo Jota passed away this year, Liverpool retired the 20. I think Birmingham retired Jude Bellingham's number way back when he was 16. That was a little bit funny. But yeah, Sonny made me fall in love with this club, and like you said, Albert, I think that he embodies the ethos of this club. I think the club mantra is, I'm gonna butcher this, but in Latin it's "Odere et facer," and then in English it translates to dare is to do. And I think that's Sonny, right? He's not afraid of any challenge. He will never shy down. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Asian players, Korean players, it's more difficult for them to find success abroad. But it didn't matter for Sonny. He still became the Golden Boot winner. He still became the first Korean or Asian captain to represent Tottenham, and he won a European trophy. And for me, just watching him for 10 years, everyone has their own struggles. Certainly me, I can't compare to some of the struggles that people have all over the world, whether it's war, whether it's poverty, food shortages, persecution, etc., etc. But for me, I had a lot of difficult moments in the last 10 years as well. And the one constant joy that I knew I could always look forward to was waking up, like you said, in the morning. For me, it was around 7 or 10 a.m. In Canada time. Waking up,
Still
turning
early.
on, yeah, still early. Waking up, getting a coffee, and just looking forward to watching Sonny play in the English Premier League. And just like you said, the ridiculous quality of goals that he scored, his smile that you would see on the TV, and just what he represented as a person on the field, but off the field as well. He was known as Mr. Nice Guy, and he really was. I think if you think of Sonny, you think humility, you think respect, you think professionalism, loyalty, all things that, I myself aspire to emulate as a person. And yeah, it's funny to say, but I don't know where I would be, and without having the dopamine hits that he gave me in the last 10 years. So I just wanted to say thank you to Sonny for truly being a sunshine in my life for the last 10 years. I wish you whatever decision you make, even if it's LAFC, I will 100% support you wherever you go. I want to thank you for introducing me to the incredible club that is Tottenham Hotspur, and you will forever be my greatest of all time. Your legend will never be forgotten, and I will be your number one fan. So thank you, Sonny.
I think it's safe to say that he is Korean Superman. And yeah, we want to thank him for not just giving us joy, but bringing Korean fans to Tottenham and keeping them as fans of the Premiership. That's going to be a generational impact that he's going to have long after we're gone, I think. And we'll just close out the video by saying, Son Heung-min 선수, 감사합니다. 고맙습니다. Thank you for all you've done. And we wish you all the best as we look to the 2026 World Cup. That's the end of this video, guys. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.